outermost layer of the kidney, what is this called?
So,
Yeah, the renal capsule, okay? And if you look at the layers of the kidney, what is this layer here?
Cortex.
The cortex. And remember, that contains now, so start to think about it, the capsules, the proximal tubules, the distal tubules. Are you videotaping me? This better not show up anywhere.
No.
No YouTube, no nothing, okay? What is this layer here? The medulla. Okay, that is the medulla. And the medulla is made up of these structures here, which are called the what? No, these right here. What are these?
Pyramids.
Those are the pyramids. And then you have these regions right here between the pyramids, which are called the what?
Renal columns.
Columns. So the renal columns and the pyramids make up the medullary region of the kidney. What is this indentation right here called?
Hilus.
I think it's hilum because it's H-I-L-U-S. So I think it's hilum, not hilus, which would be H-I-L-U-S. Yeah, I think it's hilum or hilus. Okay, so that is the hilum. What are these structures right here? Those are the minor calyces, okay? So the collecting ducts will empty, you can see a little nephron here, the collecting ducts empty into the minor calyces. So we're going to the urine's going to start to collect here, okay? From the minor calyces, the urine's filtered, or not filtered, but funneled to a larger area, so right in through here, where several minor calyces merge together, that area is called the what? The major calyx. Several major calyces merge together. We form this area here, which is the renal pelvis. And then the urine's eventually funneled out through the ureter. Okay? Okay. So let's trace the blood flow. Then we'll come back and look at the nephron. By the way, the pyramid, this mound of the pyramid that projects into the minor calyx, what is that called? Right, the renal papilla. So, what's this vessel here? Renal artery. That enters into the kidney and branches into the segmental arteries. Okay, there are actually lobar arteries. Your book does not talk about it. Your book jumps from segmental to interlobar arteries, which then branch arcuate. So the arcuate lie between the medulla and the cortex. Okay, they lie right between the two. Extending into the cortex are these little arteries here, which are the interlobular. This is a blow-up of this. Okay, so they've taken this and just blown it up. So this artery is the interlobar. That would be the
Arcuate.
interlobular, all right? Branching off the interlobular are these little vessels right here. What are these? Afferent arterioles. Okay, don't just put afferent down because that would be wrong. You have to put arterioles. The afferent arterioles lead into this capillary here, which is the glomerulus. Okay, that's where filtration occurs. Taking the blood away from the glomerulus are these vessels here, which are the
Efferent
arterioles. The efferent arterioles lead into this capillary network here, which wraps around the nephron. What is this capillary called?
Paratubular capillaries.
The paratubular capillaries. Okay, so that's where reabsorption occurs, secretion, gas exchange, all those things. Okay, the blood's taken away from the capillaries. Okay, so what is this vein right here? Which is this vein here?
Interlobular vein.
Interlobular vein. Okay, then that drains into the
Arcuate vein.
which drains into the
Segmental.
Nope. Interlobar vein. And this is where you get a little bit of difference between the arterial and venous system. The interlobar vein just drains directly into the renal veins. They don't talk about lobar veins or segmental veins, okay? I'm not sure why that is, but you just go directly from the interlobar to the renal, okay? What are these capillaries down here?
Vasa recta.
Okay, so the two different types of nephrons we talked about, cortical versus juxtamedullary. And again, the difference is these long loops of Henle, the vasa recta are special capillaries that help trap the salts here so we can reabsorb more water. And that's something we talk about in physiology. Okay, so let's look at the nephron now. So any questions on the vasculature? So this part of the nephron here. No.
Glomerulus.
No, the glomerulus is a capillary. So what is this thing? What is this? What's this?
Renal corpuscle.
The capsule. That's the glomerular capsule. Okay. So remember the nephron. Back up. The nephron. The parts of the nephron are the glomerular capsule, proximal convoluted tubule, loop of Henle, distal convoluted tubule, collecting duct. Okay. The glomerulus is a blood vessel. It is a capillary. It is not part of the nephron. Okay. The nephron is the tubular shaped structure. Okay. So the nephron is this part right there. That is the capsule. It surrounds the glomerulus. So there is the glomerular capsule. There is the glomerulus. The two of them together make up, someone said the renal corpuscle. That's the renal corpuscle, be the two of them together. Does that make sense? Okay, it's just terminology. But if you were to call this the renal corpuscle, you would be wrong. You'd be wrong because that's the glomerular capsule. So the capsule, remember, has two layers. It has an outer layer which is called the parietal layer. Then the innermost layer which sits, so here are the capillaries. The inner layer of the capsule sits directly on these capillaries and forms that filtration membrane. There's the inner layer, the yellow cells here, and what is this layer called? Visceral layer. So they show the visceral layer on this side. This side they've taken it away so you can see the capillaries. Okay. The visceral layer is made up of special cells. What are these special cells called?
Podocytes.
Podocytes, right. Okay. So blood has to pass through this capillary, through the slits here, and then it enters into this capsular space. And from there, it enters into this structure, which is the
Proximal convoluted
tubule. You can see those nice little microvilli there, okay? So proximal convoluted tubule, what's this here?
Descending limb.
Descending, yeah, limb of the loop of Henle. What is this?
Ascending limb loop of Henle. Distal convoluted tubule.
Collecting duct, okay? And again, the collecting duct is going to empty into this minor calyx, okay? So as soon as the filtrate enters into the proximal tubule, it starts to be modified through reabsorption and secretion. It's going to be modified all the way until you get to the end of the collecting duct, and then after that, once it enters here, it is now called urine. And at that point, you can no longer modify it. There's nothing else you can do to it, okay, once it hits into the calyces. Okay. What's the structure right here?
Distal convoluted tubule.
Okay, and these columnar cells here,
Macula densa.
macula densa cells. What is this vessel here?
Afferent.
Okay, and what is this vessel right here? The efferent arteriole. Now, the distal convoluted tubule and the afferent arteriole together, they form this region right here, which is called the
Juxtaglomerular apparatus.
And again, that's going to regulate filtration rate, okay? Very important regulation of blood pressure. So again, make sure you understand that this, students get very confused here. they look at this and they think this is the efferent arteriole. This is just the glomerulus without the podocytes or the visceral layer. The efferent arteriole is actually right up here. I'm not sure why students get confused by that, but they do sometimes. So that takes care of the model here. Any questions here?
Okay, one question. On the middle one, which one's the efferent, which one's the...
Okay, so it's kind of, yeah. So leading into the capsule would be afferent. Taking the blood away, leading into the capillaries would be the efferent.
So each of those glomerulus have an efferent out of
Exactly. So off of this interlobular artery are many afferent arterioles. Many, many, many. Because you literally have 1 million plus nephrons per kidney. Okay? So there's going to be lots of these afferent arterioles. Okay. This model here, pretty straightforward. We didn't talk about the bladder yet. We'll talk about it really, really quickly tomorrow in lecture. So I want to spend most of my time on reproductive. But what are these here? Adrenal glands. Okay, what are these?
Kidneys. Ureters.
Okay, and remember those are all retroperitoneal, correct? Okay, and the ureters then empty into this
Urinary bladder.
bladder. Okay, now where you're going to see the bladder has folds, it has rugae. It's lined by transitional epithelium. So all that's allowing for distension of the bladder when it fills with urine. Okay, and then it can collapse back down. There's a triangular region right here, which does not have any rugae. And the boundaries of this are where the ureters empty in and where the urethra begins. What is this triangular region here called? The trigone. And we'll talk about that. What is this muscle here? It's called the detrusor muscle because that muscle's got to contract to push the urine out. Okay, so we call that this muscle here. It's called the detrusor muscle.
Is that made with
skeleton.
No, not skeletal.
smooth muscle?
Yeah, contraction of the bladder is involuntary.
So the sphincter is what's preventing you from...
Yep, and we'll talk about it. Very much like your anal sphincters. You have one under voluntary control, one under involuntary. So when you're potty training little kids, and we'll talk about this tomorrow, whether it be for going number 1 or number 2, okay, going pee or going poo, you're training them to control that voluntary sphincter, the external sphincters. So it's the same thing. The internal is involuntary, it relaxes. So your control is the external
The
sphincter.
external ones are the ones on the side.
Yeah, the outermost sphincter, exactly. So the innermost sphincter is smooth muscle, the outermost sphincter is skeletal. And that's the one that as children develop and their nervous system develops, then they start to have better control over that, and then they can start to regulate their bowel movements and release of urine. All right, so any questions on this?